public. So we'll start the meeting. Apologies and reasons for absence.
Councillor Collins, childcare issues.
Do you have any reasons?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Declaration by members of any interest, pecuniary or other pecuniary in accordance with code of conduct, etc., etc.
No.
Hello, Greg. Welcome. No, nobody got any interests.
No.
No.
To approve or reject any application put to the meeting by the chairman. I don't have any and I don't need to. A reminder to everyone that the meeting is being recorded with the big microphone in the middle, and if the thing works, it does usually work, then it will go on the internet, on YouTube, in the parish council's place.
Greatest hits.
Indeed. The next item is then, let me just mention, we've got two items to discuss. We usually go straight into the public session, but we've got two items to discuss and vote on before opening the public session, as they relate to the way it will be operated. And I'll say more on them as and when they've been resolved either way by councillors. Meanwhile, we have to vote on minutes of the last meeting before we can conduct any other formal business. So that comes first. So we've got the minutes of the last meeting, which you should all have had. Does anyone have any problems with them?
No.
No.
No. Can I sign them as a correct record?
Yes.
Good. Okay, that is done. So then the next item on the agenda is to amend and clarify the guidance notes for the public sessions. Now, the aim of this is heading towards a guidance note, which we used to have for members of the public, but before that we need to think about what we want to do. Before I open the public session, I'm going off piste now. So the first thing is, as I just said, this item 4, to amend, clarify the guidance notes to the public session. You've had a note suggesting the proposals. Does anyone want to say anything about that note? Any queries, concerns, any suggestions for changes?
All very sensible.
No. So can I just ask people whether they are...
When you say people, is that just the parish council? Or?
Yes,
Yes.
parish councillors.
Yeah.
Are we happy to support the first part of the note, which is the amendments to the way we deal with the public session?
Yes.
Is that's a
Yeah.
unanimous?
Yes.
Okay. And then the other point right at the end is to consider and, if agreed, to amend Standing Order 3G, because one little item does cut across to 3G. Is everybody happy with that change as well, because we need to actually do that amendment? So that's also agreed unanimously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So now, having done that little bit of technical business, before I open tonight's public session, I need to say a few words about public sessions at council meetings and the changes we've just made and the reasons for them, otherwise you won't know anything about it. The fundamental thing, council meetings are held to conduct lawful council business. The public can attend them to listen, but they may not speak during the council meeting. That's a legal requirement. But to enable some limited interaction with the public, it's normal practice, though not a requirement, for local parish councils to adjourn the council meeting briefly, as we do each time we meet here on a normal meeting. And we invite the public, if they want, to make representations, ask questions, or suggest items that may be considered for future meetings. Now, the council's standing orders cover those points in more detail, but it's important to note, however, that the council isn't required to hold a public session. There's no right for members of the public to speak during a council meeting, and when I say during a council meeting, I mean including the public session in the middle of it. and the public session can be brought to an end at any time by the council chairman, who also chairs the public session. That's all the basic points. Now, until now, this council has been willing to allow greater flexibility during the public sessions than is provided for in its own standing orders. But that is now going to be curtailed. Key points are, in our new arrangements, that individual contributions are now limited to 3 minutes. It was previously 4. Since normal practice in the National Association of Local Councils model standing orders is 3 minutes, and most people stick to that. We changed ours to 4, but we've just changed it back to 3. The overall time limit in standing orders for the public session is laid down as 20 minutes, and that will now be enforced subject to the chairman's discretion when circumstances demand that it be extended, but normally we will enforce that 20-minute limit, which we have not previously done. The restrictions in standing orders on allowable contributions will now be adhered to more avidly in general. Standing orders tell us what contributions are acceptable, and points made or questions raised by speakers are not for debate, although councillors may wish to ask questions to clarify them. Lastly, to facilitate smooth running of public contributions, all will be invited to say at the start of the public session, if they wish to speak, and in a few words on what topic they want to speak, and that topic needs to be on the agenda. That's all in standing orders, or to identify their question or suggestion for future consideration, so we know then who's going to speak on what. There's not many people here tonight, but sometimes there are more. These changes that remove some of the previous indulgences towards members of the public have been imposed by the council tonight, but with some reluctance. It's not just for tonight, it's ongoing. With some reluctance, after the last meeting, which became unruly when an unwarranted attack on councillors was launched during the public session without any basis or evidence, and even after being allowed significant opportunity to stop, it was necessary to close the public session to bring the interruption to a halt, and thereby preventing any further contributions from other members of the public. It was unfortunate that such problems may creep in when a more flexible approach is adopted, and it can't be allowed to become established, so a more rigorous structure for the sessions has now been adopted, which is essentially going back to pretty much what is in standing orders, and they are standing orders as a national template. The one thing that we still allow is greater discussion time on planning applications which are on the agenda for discussion. Let's be clear about that. Planning applications that are on the agenda for discussion, not things that might vaguely relate to a planning application of a year ago. Now, notes for guidance of the public used to be made available in the past and put on chairs, and now they will be revised along with the heading for the public sessions, which goes on the agenda so that people know in future months what is happening, but that's why I've explained tonight exactly what we've done, how we've done it, and therefore everyone has been guided accordingly. And with that, let me open the public session and ask if anybody will be wanting to speak at it. You will want to speak about your planning application, I guess. And you'll be welcome to do so, by the way.
Yeah, just briefly outline it.
Okay. Yes. Right, does anyone else want to speak either on that planning application, which is the stables south of 60 Street, Freer Street, or anything else? Greg?
I don't wish to speak, but I'm conscious that one item that comes up on the agenda later, in which time I can't speak, that if anybody wants to ask me any questions about the major subject of the Ewan Land sign, they are welcome. I don't know whether that fits in to a public session.
But it could do, and thank you for mentioning that. I was going to just report on that to the extent that I knew, and I don't know whose dog it is.
Is he on the parish council?
That would be an advantage.
If you can catch him, Alan.
Please, if you-
Oh, very welcome. You haven't
Yes, you don't need to pee on all the chairs now. Yeah, thanks for that, Greg. I think what will happen then is best is if we get to that point and there's something that we would like to know, then I have the opportunity of a short adjournment, which gives us the opportunity to ask you to answer any questions,
Fine.
which is just sort of as and when needed rather than a normal situation.
Jeremy, can I say something?
Please do.
I wasn't here at the last meeting,
Right.
but some detail was relayed to me, and I just felt we ought to record my own gratitude to you for addressing this so intelligently and carefully, because I think what you've just said and what you've sent to us is hugely appropriate. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Good, all right, thank you. So we know what we're doing with the ewe and lamb sign, and we know that you may talk about your planning application, but no one else wants to say anything. Okay, so we also then normally on on public sessions go to the planning applications first, wherever they are in the agenda. So would you like to just tell us a little bit about your application for the stable and the barn on land south of 63?
I don't think you know all where it is. It's basically behind number 63. I know that there's been a bit of history in relation to this bit of land in relation to a house that got turned down. That's nothing whatsoever to do with me, I hasten to add. I bought it since and found out all this. I plan to put a barn and a stable block of 3 on it. I don't know if you know the piece of land, but there's a tennis court that was built with planning permission in 1979. It is still there, but it's very overgrown. The next posts are there and some of the fence and the hardcore underneath. But the trees have grown through it over the years and they are now quite substantial. And to be honest, I'm quite happy to leave them. They're now 20-25 foot tall approximately. And the plan is to put the stable and barn on this side, then there's the tennis court, and both buildings are lower than the tops of the trees by several feet. There's also another line of trees on the boundary which are even more substantial, which block off any vision number 63 has of the actual buildings. So they're quite shielded from view, they're not too big. They're all going to be painted green or natural wood, again to blend in. I put them quite near the gate because I don't want to build, if I put them in the middle of the field, that means a huge drive, or approach, call it what you will. So it's a nice way, I think, of tying up that bit of land. I suppose people are always worried that there's going to be houses built and all the rest of it, but this is not the case here. This is a simple barn and a stable block of 3. When I researched it, they say that 1 acre per stable block, per stable. Well, there's 3.15 acres there. That's about it, really. I think it's a neat way of keeping it out of the way, keeping the open space open, so there's no obstruction of anyone's view. There's a house the other way, but it's some considerable distance down and on the other side of the road.
Indeed.
And
you're going to keep the same access onto the road where the
That's
gate
right,
is?
yeah, there's going to be no change of access. No, none at all.
And presumably, you've got the idea of the acre per stable is to allow the horses to get out and wander around a bit, let out, not just
that's the idea, yes.
When they're let out, and that means you'll sort of keep control of the land and make sure that
That's right.
things don't go on.
Fencing on the land at the moment is really quite good. So there's no problems as far as fencing goes.
Right. Okay, does anyone want to ask the gentleman any questions?
I have one question which I think you've actually answered, which is about vehicle access and sort of driveways, because when I was looking through the applications, there's a section about how many car parking spaces now,
I understand what that meant. I thought that meant if you're building like So,
Well, I just looked at that and I thought, well, there's got to be some vehicular access to get a horse in and out, presumably, unless you ride it there.
the vehicle access will be a gravel approach to the front of the stables, and that's where I'll leave the car.
That's great. No, that's it.
I did see that question, and I thought that must be in relation to someone building Tesco's or something, and how many car parks.
It's right.
Alan.
Thank you.
I suppose a controversial question, and it's the obvious one that we might get asked. If you build a barn, say, there, and if you came back to us in 10 years' time,
I'll see.
would you expect to be able to get residential permission on a barn that you were building now?
Well, I don't think so. I don't think it'd be possible, to be honest with you, because it's a steel-framed barn, and I don't think it is convertible into a house, to be honest with the design.
Well, except that there is a history in the village, isn't there? There's one quite recently down in Rye Hill that's been converted.
It does seem to be, people always worry about it, but I have no plans for residential property.
I'm asking you the question and looking you in the eye to get a reaction. Do you see what I mean?
I have absolutely no plans for residential property there.
Yeah. No, that's. I thought it was a question that
by all means ask.
needed to be asked.
No, that's fine. I understand.
You do. Okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to ask? No. Okay, so I will close the public session. Thank you for that. And now we also, for the same reason I mentioned before, we usually go straight to the planning application anyway. Because although I know you said that you might, before we started, that you might be happy to sit through the meeting,
No, quite.
we usually jump into the planning straight away anyway and dispense with that, which is there for number 7. Now, repeating myself for the applicant, but not for some of the councillors and June and Greg. Ashford's IT system on planning is on a go slow at the minute, and when I say go slow, I mean go totally stopped, and therefore no one has been invited to consult on this planning application by Ashford. Therefore, Yvonne couldn't consult them either for us, even though she's been on to the planning officer and asked what's going on. It's all just dead because they're between 2 IT systems. So my feeling, subject to other councillors, Yvonne and I have talked about it, is that I think it's probably wrong for us to decide tonight. We can discuss it, we can give our views to one another, but I don't think we should actually be deciding it when we haven't given the opportunity to consultation. Bearing in mind that under our delegation, as a essentially minor application, it could always be actually taken by Yvonne eventually under the delegation. Exactly the same as whatever happens will be done by a planning officer in the back room or at home of Ashford. It will never go to the planning committee. Well, very unlikely to, like 99.99% it won't. That means we're not necessarily, if councillors are happy to see it delegated, then it's not necessarily a hold up, but I think it would be useful at least to discuss tonight and give our views. When this was a housing application for a modern flat-topped, flat-roofed house a couple of 3 years ago, it was contentious.
Yes.
So that was a different matter, you know. In fact, at that time, the parish council, under delegation to Yvonne, supported it, but Ashford turned it down, and then the inspector turned it down on some slightly bizarre reasons, and therefore the owner of the site decided to sell it, and the people sitting in front of us have bought it, they tell us. So, where do people stand on the application that we have got in terms of their views, not whether they're supporting it or not, but their views of it?
Do we have any indication whether, I mean, there was a lot of work, you know, people got really quite worked up about the flat roof structure.
Yeah.
Do you think the local population around that area will get worked up about the barn and stable?
Alan, we can't.
I know we can't ask
We
you.
can't really ask
No.
him. No.
I can look him in the eye and ask you the question.
During the council meeting,
Yeah.
we can't tell.
Should have asked before.
Yeah.
Should have asked before.
Yes.
This is why I don't want to take a decision before giving people the opportunity, for those who live down there, like in number 63 and like in number 59, to actually put in their views if they have any, and we should consider them in reaching our
What
view.
do we? I can ask you. Do we think that?
Well, I'm just saying what do we think of it at this point, because at some point then, bearing in mind we don't normally meet in August, if we have shared our views and come to any broad view which is helpful to Yvonne, and then we have the opportunity for her to consult and people say no, or we don't care, or they don't answer, or maybe they're terribly upset about it. I mean, all those things are possible. That gives Yvonne, if we wish, the opportunity to decide what we should put forward as our conclusion. Remember, for members of the public, that our conclusion as a parish council is only to support or object. We do not grant or refuse. Paul?
I'm asking for views. I've had a look. It's all on the website.
No, it is indeed.
I had a look at it, and my view is that I see no reason not to support it, so I'd support it. I would say this, that it is accessible to anybody to go and have a look at it. I wonder, I'm concerned that we keep this into long grass till September, so I completely agree with deferring it to Yvonne under delegation. And I wonder if what we could do is work out who, if Ashford was operating effectively, would get a notice, in other words, the immediate neighbours, and it's not beyond our ability to just point them in the direction of the website so they can have a look at it. It's doing Ashford's job, I guess.
It will be coming out because I've had correspondence with the planning officer.
When would that be?
She doesn't know,
No,
but
okay.
it will be.
Well,
Are you suggesting we become proactive?
I'm suggesting we be proactive,
Wow.
I just think, I just think if there's 3 houses that are affected normally, looking at the geography and the people there, it would be unlikely more than 3, maybe 4 properties would get a notification from Ashford on the notice that goes on the lamppost. We know who they are, we can just, quietly say, it's come up, factually, point them to it, and it's then up to them. Because at the moment, I'm looking at it, and I look through that, it's totally different from the previous one, completely. I see I looked at the schedule of materials being used, and they're very much in keeping with other agricultural properties in the area. It's not a massive structure, given the acreage, or hectareage, whatever it is. And the gentleman answered my question about the driveway. So my view is that I see no reason why we shouldn't support
I
it.
understand that. I think that's very helpful, Paul, thank you. The reason Yvonne waits for Ashford's sort of starter for 10 on who to consult is that they are really in the driving seat as the planning authority, and rather than us making it up on our own, she always waits for them. But I agree with you, we could make
And the
a good
other
shot.
thing is that when these letters do come out, they will have the time limit on them. It won't be a time limit from when it first went in.
Well, they'll eventually
So they
get the
will,
letters,
yes.
presumably. But
Yes.
don't think it would be. I don't see any problem with giving them the heads up, as a service to local parishioners.
And what do other people think? Leslie?
Yes, I'm fine. I think it's
Colin?
quite a good idea.
Yes, I'm reasonable about it. I've seen the application. I still have reservations regarding what other neighbours may say and where that may lead to.
Sure.
This is why I'm saying is that
I think that's what we have to not.
Yes.
Just because Ashford have not managed to do what they ought to be doing because their system has collapsed, that's not a good reason for us to just say, oh well, the neighbours don't count then. They still count the same as they usually would.
Are they extending the time given they're not?
Well, that's where we never know. That's where we never know. Alan
I'm relaxed. I see no reason to object.
and Sue?
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And I think that's the case for me as well. So basically, I think then we are all of a view that there is no reason why Yvonne should not take an initial pop on who to consult, which is obviously there's one neighbour, there's another one that's the neighbour one up, there's the one down at Lee House, that's 3.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anyone opposite for quite a long time because it's the orchard. So, You know, that's 3. Yvonne could do that. And then the thing is that we will be delegating it to her, not backseat driving, so it's then up to her based on what she gets back. And when we had COVID, we used to say that she would take views of councillors but then make her own mind up. She's heard views from councillors. Councillors are not concerned about it particularly, so long as neighbours have their chance. And then Yvonne can make her her decision, which of course is basically what will then happen in Ashford. It will be for the planning officer to make a delegated decision.
I think on that basis, both we and the applicants will feel far more contented, or not. We as a parish council, will be happy, and plus the applicants may well be happy to know what the position is.
No, I see what you mean, yeah, I agree. I think that it's difficult. I mean, if when she gets the material in, Yvonne is uninclined to exercise the delegation, he'll have to come back to us and we'll have to have another meeting. But we don't want to do that needlessly. That's one for Yvonne. She's not forced to do it, but she has the power. We've given it to her.
If it so be as needed, then we sort of to deal with it.
Okay. I think that's as far as we can go, and I hope that's not too obscure from your point of view. You understand what we're doing. Can I just adjourn the meeting then and you can
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, please go.
Just confirm that. So broadly, the councils are in agreement, but obviously the people at number 63, you're going to wait for them to have an opportunity to. But in the meantime, you'll support the application. Is that right?
We're not supporting it at this
I know.
point. We've given Yvonne, the clerk, our views. She will consult the 3 people that we know are around and see what they say. Depending on what they say, and she's heard our views, she can then make a decision under her delegation, or in the worst case, if she feels she doesn't feel able to do that, she'll come back to us and we'll have to meet again.
Okay.
But at this point, I think the right way to put it would be we're making progress without having been able to complete it.
And it is down to Ashford's
I'm afraid.
not us. We're just trying to kind of keep it going.
Yeah,
but I think...
Can I just say that I picked it up from the weekly list. I see all these things coming through.
Yeah.
I don't get letters quite often until 2 or 3 days later. But because of the agenda coming up, I saw it and thought, right, I'll put it on the agenda.
Yeah.
Normally, it wouldn't have been on
Till
the agenda.
September.
Exactly. It's only because I picked it up and thought, oh, I'll get a letter. And I haven't, so neighbours haven't, that this problem has arisen.
And the new system was supposed to be running in Ashford from last Monday, and up till now, I think it still isn't.
Last Monday, in the following 12 months.
Sorry?
In the following 12 months.
Well, we don't know. It's like all these things that rely on a computerised system. If it stops working, they would change into a new system, and it's gone wrong somewhere.
Do they still put the notice on the lampposts and the... If they still might completely out of date?
They're supposed to do that, but that comes
Yeah.
along in part of the same
Yes,
thing.
that will be there. Nothing
Yeah.
is out of
No, what I mean is the eagle eye, the local eagle eyes will spot it very quickly.
Well, we know, during COVID, of course, they were asking the applicant
To do it.
to put it up and then photograph it and to prove that they had done it and sent it in. Oh, yeah.
Yes, that would be a good idea.
Yeah. That's
Keep that.
Okay, right, so I think that's all we can do on that. So now we go back to the main running order, which is matters arising. The planting of the Platinum Jubilee Oak sapling. Over to you.
If you remember, we were talking about Bishop Rose coming to plant it. Well, I saw in the Outlook that she is coming to Ebony on the 4th of September for the pilgrimage. So I thought, well, if she's over here, perhaps she could pop down the road and do our tree. So I got the details from Lindsay to ask, and I got a letter back to say yes, she would be willing to do that. She is lunching with the Bacons in Ebony, so we got to liaise. And obviously we've got an 11 o'clock service down here, which would normally on the first Sunday be Eucharist. On the second Sunday it's usually the Celtic service, which is a shorter one than Eucharist. And I'd also noticed that in August those two have been swapped round, so I asked Lindsay whether perhaps they could be swapped round again in September, which will give us a bit more time between the service and her popping off for lunch to have our little... he said yes, that would be okay.
Good. Double check with him, because sometimes these things...
No, this was a couple of days ago.
Double check with him. Because sometimes things are promised and they've got so many things to think about that these things get lost in the ether, you know?
Okay.
Will that blend his spade?
I was just about to ask if we have to get a silver spade, like the Queen uses.
Yes.
So I'm thinking sort of 12 o'clock, if she comes over to the church for 12 o'clock, so she will be able to meet people that are coming out to church then.
We could even, encourage to drop a hymn, for example, if it was necessary. Do you see what I mean?
Well, you could now join in and ask her to the service.
Good move.
Indeed.
If she's going this way, then she could go straight from the service to Blackstone.
Yes, having a service that day.
No, because Marilyn's happy with us doing that at 12 o'clock, so probably not.
Okay.
So if everybody's happy with that
It's
arrangement,
very nice.
if there's anybody that would like to help me sort of organise what exactly we're going to do, it would be good.
I think it's definitely on for the church warden. With his helpers.
And I think anybody who's ever been on the PCC...
I just thought we were particularly good at that sort of thing.
You have the baton.
Okay, so we're into planting.
If you send a little email to me and Paul, perhaps between us we can come up with something useful.
Which end do you want to hold?
We're into planting, and we'll have to get a nice little pile of good brown earth rather than the usual
It might seem obvious, but we will be inviting our tree warden.
Oh yes.
Right.
Oh, well, I'm expecting him to prepare the plot.
Ah, all right.
But I
Don't
haven't
forget
asked
to
yet.
Yes, do tell him. Give him a bit of notice.
And I think
Until I told
perhaps,
you first.
I think perhaps we do have to go and buy a nice clean new Wilkinson spade or something.
But I do have a smallish, with a small blade, red coloured spade, with the blade about that wide, which could be cleaned up, and it's quite light for a bishop to handle. Do you see what I mean? Rather than the
Yes.
So that might be appropriate.
Okay, either that or
And I can even give it
lash out a new
red
one.
paint.
Okay, so one or the other, that or we lash out a new one.
He's well known.
Because it has to be photographs as well. We need it to shoot a little bit.
You want to look as though it's done some work previously.
No, the Queen always gets a new one.
But it isn't the Queen, this is the Bishop.
Well, there you go. Queen, Bishop, pretty much.
And we're the pawns.
Yeah.
Right, okay, that's the Jubilee
Where's it
Oak.
being planted?
At
Where?
the
Bottom of the
foot
cemetery.
of the cemetery,
Oh, yes.
which enables her to see our extension as well.
Of course, you sort of bear in mind it does take an awful long time to get everybody from the church to the cemetery and stuff,
Well, I don't know how many people will come along
No.
to.
Well, even so, even
Well,
finalists, it
only
takes...
water if she wants
No,
to.
but wasn't that one of the things
Yes.
at some stage?
Oh, no, that's all.
Why not get her to do it at the same time? Consultation, no? No?
Unlikely.
Oh, okay.
Okay. On we go.
Yes.
One step.
You and Lamb, on we go. You and Lamb sign. We're making, and I say we very loosely, actually, Greg and his partner, Kate especially, both of them, they're making very good progress on the you and Lamb sign. The old post has been cut up and taken down, the sign removed from the top. That's to say the wrought iron frame and the sign. A new post has been purchased and is presently sitting in Greg's yard, front garden, side garden, which has been preparing the edges ready to go into the framework. Framework needs some work. Kate, his partner, who is a proper picture restorer, has been working on the sign. Has it been doing anything it shouldn't?
I think we might
It,
just
it had that look about it,
Yes, it did a bit.
but I think it may have changed its mind.
Don't do much
So-
for me. They're just so hot, the dogs.
It must be miserable being covered in that on there.
And the framework is getting some work done on it as well by Paul Stone, because when it used to hang on two loops,
Yes.
and where it's been doing that for 50 years or whatever, and it's been wearing through them, so you know it was getting towards the point where even if the post didn't fall down, the sign was going to fall down. But it's been getting done up. I have made inquiries and found somebody. Okay.
Come on, I should do it.
You
Take
get
the
to
dog
take
with
the dog home as a bonus.
Perhaps if you do take it out or it goes and close the door, that would be good.
So I'll get bit now. Come on. So,
That's brilliant. Thank you for coming.
I hope
Goodbye.
you're going to record that we had a dog present this evening.
It probably is dehydrated.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying you approached somebody.
Yes, I've approached somebody who's got the necessary farm equipment, which, subject to sizing, will be able to lift the post up and drop it in, and also then lift somebody up to put the stuff back on the top. It was done before by chopping the post up and a scaffolding tower, but this will be a better way. We're just going to make sure it can get high enough. So I've passed that on to Greg's partner, and they'll make inquiries in a couple of weeks with said farmer who's got one of these things which can go right up high. And it's called a trans lifter or something. Telehandler, that's it. Telehandler.
Good photographs too, thank you very much.
Oh, it's back in again.
On the,
Failure.
Doesn't want to leave us. So,
Failed to close the door. Go on.
so what needs to be done from now?
Nothing needs to be done by us directly. The bills so far have been paid to Greg, and they are. There's a bit of a hiatus while Greg's partner's away for something or other for a week or two, but then she's working on the sign. Paul Stern is going to work on the frame, and they'll tie up with the farmer and decide whether it all goes back in one piece or they put the post in and then put the bit on the top. And really, you know, we've delegated all those hard bits of the work over to them. So this is just an update for us.
And just to clarify that it was the post invoice was direct from the carpenter that made the post.
Yes.
The
That's right, yes, I was wrong there.
So
Yeah, that was fine. Okay, so that's going very well with our gratitude that that is being taken on, and it will be very good to see it all complete. Okay, we've dealt with the planning application, so now we're on to reviewing the cemetery fees and charges. Now, Yvonne has put out a spreadsheet for us.
Yes.
So would you like to talk to that?
well, as you can broadly see, our fees aren't way out, apart from Tenterden, which of course comes under Ashford, so their charges. And from what I can see, it includes digging, which of course none of ours do, and the others don't as well. And probably the eternal fees in with that, because they didn't quote that separately. But otherwise, you know, we're up on some, down on others. My only thought was that perhaps we could put the interment fee up to £80, which is what the others are. We're the lowest on that. But what do others think?
Put it up to 80, that's
From 75.
okay, but then Headcorn 105, Goudhurst 225, Charlton 550. I mean, the thing is, they're all over the place really. It's very hard to find patterns, isn't it?
Exactly.
Do we know how much, bearing in mind people who are buried in Wittersham will get the funeral director to organise the digging? Do we know how much? I suppose it's all wrapped up in the whole funeral then.
Yes.
In fact, the ones who pay, including digging to Tenterden, probably pay as much for the other part as well.
We do charge double, obviously, if you don't actually live.
Yeah.
We're not lower than Goudhurst, aren't we?
We are.
Yeah, see, it's up and...
It's up and down.
There's quite a lot of talk in the press at the moment about, and I think it's a little bit worrying, about abolishing altogether fees for things like baptisms and marriages in churches, because it seemed that everybody should have a free option to choose to have that done and won't be discouraged and go off to other types of ceremony. Of course, it doesn't take into account that the Church of England does have its costs to meet, like everybody else. It's a sort of head in the sand type approach that, you know, the Church of England grows its resources on a tree. And I suspect this will extend to the opportunities to be buried and disposed of as well before very long. So it's, you know, it will all become a matter of right.
Sure.
But I think it's the wrong way to go myself.
When did we last review these, Yvonne? Or change them a lot more accurately?
I think I put it down 2016, I believe.
Okay.
I think the length of time we should think about putting them up.
I mean,
Certainly some of them.
Roughly, how many bodies are we talking about a year, approximately?
4 or 5.
We're not talking about big numbers, are we?
I think you said 3 last year.
Shall I see if I can extract this dog from
Yes, well, you have another go. Yes.
I should think you probably want to drink the water.
Yes,
I
I
do.
think that's...
Actually, if I take it through next door, I can find it.
There's water.
Yes, there's a dog from next door.
Yeah.
Is there a dog
I
park?
don't know, they always used to.
I
I
don't
know,
know.
I'm not really interested in what it is.
Oh, well.
I
think he would next door.
Well,
Thank you very much.
He looks as though he's got a sense of ownership.
Or it's my Pomeroy who's left it over from the other side of the screen. Anyway.
So,
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks for coming.
I'm going to shut the door.
Oh, whatever.
So I think that in terms of the fees, I agree with Sue. We should look at it, but you know, let's be honest, it's not a major revenue generator. I just think on a point of principle of us sort of being financially well governed, we should look at these charges and say costs aren't going up and what have you, and maybe we make a cost that we think reflects us being good. Showing good financial governance. I would probably say that we put it up to £100
from what?
from 75.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's 25%
It's been
increase.
5 years and we've got a lot of inflation coming
Yes,
this year.
I was thinking-
went up by 20% or 25%.
I was thinking more about 5% across the board on each one.
Only 5.
5%.
Well, that's not even covered inflation
No.
in 5
Well,
years.
it may not do,
No.
but you go to the opposite extreme otherwise.
I think that what it also does though is we don't have to do it every year.
Hmm?
That means we don't have to do it every year.
Mm.
When was the last time
Yeah, I
we
mean,
did
the
it?
trouble is that if you do it in small
Oh, right,
amounts,
so-
it will go to odd numbers, whereas at least if you do it in chunks, you can do it to the
If we were
nearest fives and
taking,
tens.
because I've just done this on something for the last 5 years, so there was a particular fee that was looked at 400, and that went up to 465. It was last looked at 4 years ago. So you can see the
15%.
grade, the grade of, and this goes back 6 years. I just think if we put it up to 20, up by 25, it covers us. Maybe we don't have to. No one can then say, oh, you're not keeping your costs fresh.
We have also been asked by the internal auditor to look at it, haven't we?
Oh,
It was in his report.
right.
I'd certainly go for round figures.
Yeah, I think so. So, you know, like for instance, the 375, if you were putting 20% on, you'd go to about 450, but maybe you do 425 or something. Because, you know, the thing is that over 5 or 6 years, even though, you know, this year's exceptional, but even if you've got 3% a year, you know, 3% a year times 5 years is over 15, 2% a year is about 12 once you've compounded it.
We've also had the major capital cost of the cemetery extension, which we did at the time. We did talk about what we're going to do to recover some of it, looking at it. And the only alternative is we put in our own crematorium.
So,
Which has been done before.
In the beer house.
Can I then suggest to move on that perhaps we ask Yvonne to look at adjusting these rates, and I didn't understand the memorial fees, by the way, but I don't really need to, it's her area. But if Yvonne looked at adjusting them all by maybe around 15%, let's say, and then, you know, some up, some down to keep them within the sort of £5 numbers rather than go to £17.32.
We don't want that.
And you don't want that. Can I suggest
Yes.
that?
Yes.
So about 15%, and you look for the nearest numbers. Good.
Thank you.
Right, the next one is to review interactions with residents and the public. I put a note round earlier if you saw it.
Yeah.
This is nothing terribly exciting. There are two clauses in the policy that we've had for some years, which has been on the website. 3.1 and 3.2 both need updating. 3.1 has an issue in it because it talks about the parish desk, which used to be in here on market days. The first Tuesday of the month, which was also a market day, but it was only once a month. And Yvonne used to come along for the 2 hours and sit here nursing a cold coffee and talk to anyone who wanted to ask questions, make points or whatever. Now there is no market anymore, there is no coffee morning in here anymore because that's all temporarily collapsed and maybe permanently collapsed. So I have had a talk with Georgia, who now runs the Swan, and she said she's happy that if this takes off, that people, once she's opened her new Georgia's Kitchen, which is the cafe in the restaurant, which will work during day hours rather than evening hours when the restaurant will be open. She said they're happy to put together there. So I have suggested wording which allows for that if and when it happens, and takes out obviously this place. I mean, I said that it used to happen here and now we're waiting to find another place. That's the obvious one, because if people want to buy a coffee and a bit of cake, they can do it. Unfortunately, it won't be as cheap as it used to be in here, but they can certainly do that. And I'm hoping that people in Wittersham will take to having, you know, their little get-togethers in there. So that's 3.1, and then 3.2 needed to change slightly because we've just amended the arrangements for public sessions to come back nearer to standing orders. So that's why I've said in the middle. The rest is pretty similar. Restrictions apply, see the council standing orders, power 3. So can we agree that if that gets incorporated into the rest, that is the change of policy there? As I say, it's just tidying up to update it. Good. And avoiding things disagreeing with reality. Right, to consider and agree projects for inclusion in a highways improvement plan. We've talked about some of these in the past, and we need to be putting that together. It's a little bit difficult as of tonight because some of this will rest on, or could rest on, whether Stocks Road planning application goes through tomorrow night or doesn't. If it goes through, then the developer will presumably, unless they've lost interest, start thinking about what they're going to do and finalising details with the planning officer. And that will then address some of our issues. If it doesn't go through tomorrow night and is refused by Ashford, which is entirely equally possible, maybe more possible, then I have no particular knowledge of this. My working assumption is it will be appealed for against refusal, in which case, you put it off another 9 months probably.
How will you hear, Yvonne, about the outcome of the meeting tomorrow night?
You should hear me either. Should hear me either cheering or in tears on behalf of the parish council.
Well, which will you go?
I think it was these.
Jeremy will be there.
I will be supporting the parish council.
When you know the result, will you let us know?
Yeah, I think I will.
Because otherwise, one of us will put our
No,
conquer in it somewhere.
absolutely. I'll be there to support the parish council's position.
just an aside to help Alan, the whole meeting is streamed onto YouTube
Yes.
live.
Well,
So you can sit at home and watch it happen.
unfortunately, on this device, I struggle
it.
to pick out
No,
anything
no,
like that.
no.
Can't see Alan doing that.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
right, I like to say it.
Right, I shall go in disguise then. Yes.
There will be some people.
So have we got a deadline for this submission?
No, not that we know of. It's supposed to be a sort of annual event. So, I mean, no doubt if we submit it, it'll then just linger for ages before they say that they've got the time to come and actually look at it with us.
Yes, when you get on to correspondence and the third one, that's what you're more about.
Yeah. Okay.
So, in terms of my top of the head potential list, there's the tarmac footway by the hairdressers that they've said definitely has to go on the HIP, the Highway Improvement Plan. There are the aspirations for chicanes and gates at the entrance to the speed limit at either end of the B2082. Now there's two bits of project in there. One is gates, as in putting a bit of white wood on each side that just catches people's eyesight, and or maybe shark's teeth painted on the road until they wear out. But the other possibility is chicanes that we've talked of here, which is probably pushing it a bit with KIC, with KCC highways, but I don't see arguably why not.
Well, I'm very pleased to see the Welsh Government introducing 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in all their towns and cities.
That's been clarified today by the person involved, saying they're not actually introducing 20-mile-an-hour speed limits everywhere. What they're doing is, this is what it said on the radio, the person said on the radio, they're changing the system so that everyone who wants a 20-mile-an-hour limit doesn't have to get a highway order through. It can be 20 without a highway order, or you just leave it at 30. I think that was the principle.
I go with that principle for the village.
You don't drive in Wales.
I have no objection driving the road, but the cost of getting there these days is pretty prohibitive.
So that's the second one. The third one is, and this would tie in rather, I suspect we could put it in anyway, but the Stocks Road application, should it be granted, has already put in to move the 30-mile-an-hour limit eastwards, 120 metres, from just by Miriam out towards Leslie's. I think it would be better if it went the other side of Acton Lane, to be honest.
Because that's such a dangerous corner.
And they'll say you can't have it out there because there's no houses, but go to High Holborn and the 30 limit runs for a few hundred yards before you get to any houses.
Yes, we could do that.
Okay, the next one, go on.
Sorry.
Go on.
No, I thought that was the only one.
No. The next one, so we could do that anyway, but I think it'll be the, I mean, the other thing is that these still cost money. I mean, even moving a 30 limit, they will come up with a cost of 10,000 quid or something, you know. The zebra crossing in the vicinity of Ewan Lamb, that's a bit hopeful, but it is something that a resident has actually asked for, and it does have some logic. The problem, as I think we said last week, is that according to their book of rules, if the 85th percentile speed is above 35 mile an hour, you can't have a zebra crossing because it's dangerous, which, as I suggested, is catch-22. If it's too dangerous to cross the road because people go too fast, you can't have a zebra crossing. And if they're only pootling along, you can have a zebra crossing. I'm told the logic behind that, which I hadn't otherwise appreciated, this was at Calcon last Wednesday, someone pointed it out. If you're not allowed to have a zebra crossing, you can have a pelican crossing with lights. The trouble with that is you're multiplying the cost mega because of needing the standards and the lamps and the maintenance and the electric.
And also
Well,
it's
because if they
impacting
move
on
the
the
30-mile-an-hour
dark
limit, then it
No,
would be
no.
well within.
Well, I wouldn't count on it, but you're right, it could be possible. Yeah. The thing is, it should be within, but we know already from the traffic survey that was done for the Stocks Road scheme, which has had Roger Parker jumping up and down ever since, that the percentiles coming into the 30 limit where it is now, were way above. I mean, they were like 40, 43 or something, I think it is
The
saying
SID
about.
The SID downloads.
Yeah.
Would it
indicate
evident?
But isn't that partly because, you know, there's that long straight piece of road which
Both
people can
sides.
accelerate
Both sides.
Oh, yeah.
down, you know, towards the village. You need to stop them.
Well, all is logical and true, except that the people who are speeding will speed according to the road being fairly straight along there, no matter the limit and where it is.
So irrespective of Stocks Road, irrespective of Stocks Road development, we've still got a problem.
We've got a problem that we could
and if
ask.
they're saying, oh, we can't put in a safety feature because people will break the speed limit and go too fast, ergo we need to fix the upstream
that's
problem.
You're not wrong.
And
Absolutely.
put the chicane in.
I was going to say chicane was the...
The argument is
Yeah.
all there, Paul, and I do agree with you.
Hmm?
The other thing, though, talking about what slows people down, I mean, the chicane would slow them down a bit more, I think. But at my end, when I walk out of the meadows and go towards the shop, then for the few weeks that we have to sit there on the grass outside Mervyn's, I'm amazed at seeing vans and things that come along. I know there's always a bit of a delay on the signalling, but they come along and they're almost into the bend when they're still doing about 38. And I wouldn't go round the bend in the car at 38, but they just sort of hurtle along.
Regardless.
And that's quite a bit after 30 limit.
Yes.
The 30 limit is well back before the meadows.
I think that the logical thing is a chicane on both, a proper traffic calming thing, and then the other things will follow in terms of children being able to cross safely and etc. etc. The other thing, of course, is we don't yet know the outcome of the planning application opposite Dax.
No.
And
I'll get to that. I'll get to that.
Sorry.
No, you're right. 40 mile an hour in Peeling Quarter Road. Now that was put up to Mike Hill. Mike Hill agreed to fund the speed survey. This is about 4 years ago. The argument was quite good. I mean, they've got more houses there and more drives seemingly than in Small Hythe that got the 40 limit, but that's identical. And so it went up and the highway poo-pooed it straight away and said, look, no cause for it. But it's national speed limit, it's bendy and it's a hill. Now, since that, they've put 40s and 50s all around here. And I think that it's now unreasonable. One of their arguments was that if they put a 50 limit in, they wouldn't do a 40. And if they put a 50 limit in, people treated that as a target and went faster. No, I'm telling you literally, that's what they said. So I think it has to be a 40. But there are 40s in places, you know, like around Bittenden, where there are no houses, no drives, no anything, no hill. Just on the, and they're bigger, wider roads, just old, but you know, it's got a few bends in it. So I think it's worth having another shot. And of course, we are a reasonably busy road, the bus route.
It's because it's a B road.
Yeah, and not an A road, yeah. But then, well, I mean, A roads in principle, here's another bit of tangled thinking, A roads in principle ought to be faster than B roads, not slower.
Yeah, but there's an argument. Actually, I don't know, 20 years ago or something, I looked into trying to get the designation of this road changed from a B to an A.
Oh, right.
Via, because we had quite good relations with, or the borough had quite good relations with King Highways, as it was then, like that. And it sort of had a little bit of credence, but it never was took off because so much work would have to be done to the road to bring it up to A state.
Absolutely, that's
That
the
was
key.
it.
It's widening it mostly.
Yeah, widening it, straightening it up, realigning, heaven knows what.
Filling the potholes.
I don't think they had them there, Jazz.
Oh, right. They still did them there.
Cart rats.
The next one is Sid in Swan Street. Now this, Yvonne and I have both suffered for this one. We always wanted a Sid in Swan Street. They agreed it initially and then changed their minds and wouldn't allow it on the grounds that they don't feel that it's their land along the edge there. And I think we have to have another go at that.
Yes.
And when the then head of highways, KCC Highways, came and walked around the village with me, and I told him that as we walked past it, he said, that's ridiculous. Well, he's been promoted since then. But, you know, I think when they come here, we ought to really have a go. It may fall on the fact that we can't persuade someone to let us put a sign on their grass. But I think we probably can.
Oh, okay.
Sue's
But
volunteering.
far enough away from the
You've got to be up from the 30, but then again, I mean, this is again, you see, true. Swan Street, I think, is a nearly a death trap because people, it's on slope and they go too fast. And the 30 could do with going down further. Right, and then the last one that suits Paul, I think, and this is only a joke, of course, I think we need either traffic lights or a mini roundabout at Poplar Field if that scheme gets through for 23 houses. We might have to knock a bit down to get
A few houses, yeah.
Yeah, to get the roundabout.
Three lights up round the roundabout.
Yeah. But the traffic lights would do. There'd have to be
Unless we go through
lights.
Unless we go take the Leeds Village option, which is the bypass.
Yeah, that would be great.
I used to say that, but I thought that was pushing a bit fast.
Take them
So I
on there
thought traffic
first.
lights. What?
I mentioned it earlier, the sign for the cemetery.
You did indeed, and I wrote it down here and I didn't read it. A sign on the road to point to the cemetery. There is incidentally the argument, I mean we've been here before as well, where there's never a good answer. We could do with a sign to the village green, the proper village green, and arguably we could do with a sign to the play area, but everyone says you mustn't have a sign to the play area because that attracts people who don't want to know where the play area is, which is terrible. I mean, if that's a sign of things to come.
Safeguarding all that.
Mind you, there's I don't know if you saw, this is off subject really, but there's stuff today, and I think it must be the Times, about the inquiry that's reporting into Telford.
Yes.
Yes.
1,000 children going on since the 1970s. So maybe they're right, you don't tell anyone where the play areas are in case they go and use it.
We did talk about signing on other areas, though, didn't we? The village
Oh yeah,
green was
that's on the
Sign the village.
that's on the task
Because I
list.
think we want to try and put more focus on the village green.
Well, I've got to chase Ashford again, and it was the chief executive who, and I've chased her through her PA again since, who passed it down to Mark James, who said, oh yes, he had asked legal and it was illegal. I never asked for legal to be involved, I wanted an in-principle view. But supposedly it's just gone in the pile and legal is a good place to bury it. So our councillor may be someone who can go and put a rocket up somebody. This is last October, I asked the chief executive and showed her the map and everything, and face to face, and said, would you like to give us an in-principle view of whether we could take, I had several possibilities, but one was to take the village green off you.
Oh yes,
Because you can't do anything with it anyway. And it's just been buried. And if the village green was done through a transfer of assets, which I believe is done through Localism Act, doesn't cost anything, then that would give us an opportunity to start contemplating a better play area on it, which one of our residents is keen to try and raise money for.
Yeah. Well, it's keen to fund.
And we've got bids, you know. So
Are
it's
you
just
wishing
going nowhere.
Are you wishing the housing department of Ashford Borough Council to give you the green?
Well, it would be more. I mean, the whole idea.
No, I'm just asking.
The whole
Yes.
idea of Localism Act is it's simply a transfer between different levels. It's all public service. It's different levels of the councils. They're not supposed to sell them. They're supposed to pass
It
them.
would also reduce the operating costs of Ashford Borough Council, and I would think they need every penny they can get.
Well, I don't know if it would reduce their costs, but it would reduce their troubles.
Well, they've got a responsibility. For example, you know, currently, as I see it, they are responsible for the safety in the children's playground.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
but the
if
village, the children's playground isn't on the village.
Well, which is who does that belong to then?
Yeah, housing.
Well, we'll take that as well.
I
mean, it makes sense.
I thought that's what you were
Yeah,
trying
it
to do.
makes sense to
Actually.
consolidate the
You're
whole
right,
thing,
you're
take
right,
responsibility,
you're right.
let costs get
Yeah,
reduced,
you're right.
and we can have action.
Yeah.
You're right, Paul. I gave Tracy Curley 3 alternatives to consider. One of them was to take the play area, but that was not my favourite choice because it's in the wrong place. Second one was to have a bit of the other land to put the play area onto, but not the village green. And the third one was to have the village green, or all of it,
Yeah.
but in fact, having had the play area person out here with Bumblestanden and gone around it all, she agreed that potentially the village green could host the play area, and it is the village green anyway. So, I mean, there are all sorts of choices for Ashford. I think that from our point of view, all we really need is the village green, not the play area, which is of no particular value to us where it is, and not indeed the sheep field, or where it's now a horse field. No particular value to us, except if it pays a little bit for the horse, but then Ashford would lose that.
That would have never included.
No, indeed. But the village green specifically is the easiest one to argue, because it has no value whatever to Ashford, because in 1,000 years, well, I suppose it's always possible to change a statute or something, but in 1,000 years they can't build houses on the village green.
Yes, and that's why if we moved the play area onto the village green, but we didn't retain the play area, you could build some houses on the play area. And if that was Ashford's, it's still owned by Ashford.
They could, but bear in mind they could do that anyway, because it's housing land and it's housing play area. They just do away with it.
Well, okay. I just think think it would make sense to have the whole thing.
Well, that was one. Well, that was one of the possibilities. Yeah. It was all
in Tracy Curley's court.
It is in.
And she's had 9 months.
All of that is true. Bear in mind that the more we take on, the more responsibilities we get as well.
Yeah.
But the easiest sell is the village green. Others possible, but from my point of view anyway, I have no particular interest in the play area being where it is. It's a rubbish play area, and if we're going to spend a lot of money, we wouldn't want to do it 200 yards away from where the children want to play.
Yeah, no, I completely agree.
So that's something though that you might...
You say that Tracy Curley passed it to Mark James?
I don't know if it was directly. What happened when I chased it a few months ago, when I was going to see the play area lady, and I rang up Tracy's new PA, because it's not in the streamer anymore.
Right.
And I gave her...
Not anybody at the moment, the phones don't work.
Right, and I gave her the email, well they were here falling apart. I gave her the email that I'd exchanged with Tracy Curley, which she said helped her to immediately know that it had gone to Mark James. She went to chase Mark James, and he said, oh dear, I haven't chased it up, and it went to legal.
Well, that's what
And that's the last I heard. I mean, I can't say I chase it every month, I don't.
Okay, can I make a point? I know we've sort of talked about this, but this bit about having the whole lot is in our interest, because one of the things that certainly Leslie and I have looked at is the community land trust option, and we have very little land that we own, and apart from Coronation Field, and I wouldn't be the first person to lead the charge to build community land trust houses there, but if we had it, then we've got the options. I agree with you that we have to maintain it. But Ashford's track record of maintaining their playground there is not brilliant.
That's all true.
And I just think we should say to maybe through our borough council that it would be a great shame if we go to the first anniversary of no action.
Just bear in mind with that cunning plan, Paul, that the piece of land you're talking about has got the same access problems as the one that is presently leading to them wanting to bring 23 houses, let alone another 23 down the lane.
I don't disagree with that, but that might happen as well. This gives us options, that's all I'm saying.
Well, no, it doesn't give you options unless you've got access, and you haven't got access. Originally, the site S61 failed. We've got someone here who knows more about it than I do. Site S61 failed because they couldn't get across the village green pond one way and across by the hammerhead of Lloyd's Green the other way. The present 23 houses, Ashford and ourselves agree, is impossible coming down past Poplar Field, past Audrey's. There was another possibility that Ashford were trying to push for site S61, which was to cut across a little piece of land which Tim Piper said he owns, and he wasn't going to let them. So unless you build a road coming down from the north, then the bypass to Wittersham goes over that side.
Or one of those other things changes at some time in the future. I think the point I'm trying to make, Jeremy, is that this is an opportunity to keep our options open. Right now, as everything stands, very little chance of it. But things change, you know, as we've seen over the years. And I just think that it would make sense, if we can, to take ownership of the whole thing. If in future it's a whole difficulty getting access or what have you, but something's changed in the future. If we decide we need to build sheltered housing for older people and there's a different type of access there, it might need an Act of Parliament, who knows? I mean, things do change. But what it is us sort of at least setting it up for options in the future. And I can't see any real reason why we
that was offered.
wouldn't do it.
That was offered in the sense that it was one of the things.
Yeah,
exactly how that would go.
Yeah.
It would be one bit, another unspecified bit, the village green bit, or all of the bits.
Yeah.
And it's all just displayed into the whole. So if you manage to persuade anyone in Ashford to actually, officers, to come into the office and do anything, which I know is tricky.
They don't have to come into the office.
Yeah.
It's just being able to
Better if they did. You'd know them.
know what. No,
You
they
know
do.
that they've come in the office and done something.
No, they work from home doing the stuff.
You are sounding a bit like Rees-Mogg at the moment.
Yeah. They can call them up on Teams and that. You know.
Well, position of
Okay.
So I won't have an opportunity to talk about James sometime.
All right, so we know all about all of that. That was the hips. So, correspondence.
Had enough.
Bye-bye, Phil. Thanks for coming.
Yes, we do know. We are aware of it.
Probably would, but
Thanks very much.
see you, bye.
Yeah, bye. Flashing light, skew by trees.
Oh, yeah, we know about it, yeah, you're right. And I haven't done it yet. So, correspondence. Madam Clerk.
Right. I had an email, we sent off the £1,300 to Peter Burnett, the Outlook, and he came back and said, thank you very much appreciated, and it will help with the increase in their printing costs.
Good.
The Commonwealth War Graves Commission, I'm not getting anywhere with this, but this came through, Sue passed this to me. It was something that was sent to Jeanette. The War Graves Commission want to put a sign to say that that there is a grave in the cemetery, which is what we have. And it gives me an email address, signs at cwgc.org to contact for further information, which I did. Nothing at all. So I then went to the ordinary website, and they do a contact, so you fill in an email. And I actually had acknowledgement from that they got it, but I've still had nothing. And I did try, I got the High House Farm. Rob somebody?
Watch.
Watch.
Here.
He's on the commission.
Yes, well this is how it came originally from him to Jeanette. I tried him, but no reply on his phone at the moment. So I'm not getting anywhere at the moment, but so there's nothing really we can do. Well, yes, but I think that was just, he was just going to liaise. And because it was thought that it was the church, it was going to be Jeanette and Dave that liaised.
Right.
But Dave's quite, obviously very keen, and Dave and I have actually spoken about this before because I've seen one somewhere else. I thought, that was a good thing to have. Yes. And I did mention it to Dave, and he said yes, that would be good. Some time ago. But so at the moment, I put it on the agenda, hoping I would have had a result, but obviously I don't.
I think that Rob must be around because he
No,
did something about
No. Thanks for coming.
I
on Facebook today, earlier today.
I saw him a week ago. So he was in the LinkedIn, but I think he may have gone on holiday since.
Can I just ask a quick question? Earlier on we talked about a sign to the cemetery. Could we sort of combine the two and get the Commonwealth War Graves Commission to pay for it?
Well,
this is where the war grave is, in the cemetery. I mean, it would save us some money.
Well, only in as much as they put it in the cemetery.
So how does anyone driving by know?
They don't.
They all know, that's the point.
It's as you enter, it just tells you as you enter the cemetery, there is one here.
There.
Oh, right.
Or this cemetery contains war graves.
Yes.
Oh,
I
okay.
did take a photo once, but actually it was years
Okay.
ago. And I found
Okay,
it,
so
but-
It's often just affixed to the gate, or
Yes.
Right.
you know, they often put it on an existing structure.
Do they tell you where it is once you get in the gate, or?
No,
Okay.
no, you have to then search out.
But it's very obvious ours.
Yeah.
Because they look
Yeah.
after it. It's a lovely
Yeah.
white stone.
I mean, they're relatively modern, most of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they all go down there.
And looked after.
Yes.
Right, so that's just sort of bumbling
Okay.
along.
Yes, I'm afraid I haven't got it.
Next one is the KCC schemes and the delivery team restructure update, which you mentioned earlier. You were going to talk about, Yvonne?
Yes, that was that's what I forwarded to you. But I did ask, I did go back because it wasn't terribly clear how would we get in contact with anybody. And they came back to say that there's no particular officer who will be dealing with the designated area anymore. So all contact will be made by this email address, which is eastophighwayimprovements@kent.gov.uk. They are recruiting for all the extra staff they need to run this. So as soon as they're up and running, they'll be in a position to meet with councils, and I will be informed when
So
they're
they'll
up
be
and running.
Right.
In the meantime, our highways improvement plan will be sent to this
Yeah.
email address.
They'll be dipping into the potholes budget for the extra officers.
Mm.
Now, just as a little aside, when Wittersham was cut off in the middle, and I went along I persuaded KCC to get out and move their backside, and they came on the Sunday, wasn't it? Yeah, on the Sunday. After I spoke to them Sunday morning, and they were there by Sunday, sort of late lunch.
Later on.
And the highway engineer was there, who I spoke to, and he is the level above the highway steward, who Yvonne usually deals with.
Yeah.
He was fine, and he also said that we were lucky with our highway steward because he is very active, and if you tell him something, he sort of goes and looks at it. So, fair dues. But at least he'd been to Wittersham, this fellow, and they did get out. And it was interesting that because I rang the out-of-hours number and gave them a good account of the risk, and he said, I will speak to the highways duty officer straight away. This is 9 o'clock, 8:45 on Sunday morning. And they did actually say,
right.
we better go and do something. And they also then, I'd already told Southern Water they ought to be out, South East Water, and they said, it won't be till sometime later next week.
Yeah.
And when I spoke to the highways officer, he said the same thing. Yeah, I've already been on to them, and they said, it'll be sometime later next week. He said, I'm not satisfied with that, I'm going to have another go at them. And then he got them out for about 1 in the morning. To at least start signing it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't ideal, but it wasn't bad considering.
Well, it's better than they could have been.
Oh, it could have been really serious because
It really was.
and of course the other thing then was that we were shut off for a couple of days, but then that was inevitable.
Yeah.
And the other thing that came from that was that when the Southern Water man came, a young lad who had to go round actually turning water off, the taps didn't work. The map didn't seem to be right, and the taps didn't work. That's why one of them is marked up at the top of Swan Street now, because it's leaking since he had to go at it.
Is that it? Oh.
It's leaking, but one of them he said he couldn't turn at all, or maybe even two. He had a big thing to do it with, but they're just all no use. And I said, well, now are they going to come and do them? They need to do that now. And his reaction, this is before he marked one up that he has done, when it leaked, he said, probably not. Which means, they're now supposed to be coming to do this flushing, which is a routine task. They may find they can't do it because the taps don't work.
So meanwhile the water's trickling down the street, at the same time as everyone today got an email from them saying save water, and
But to be honest, it's only a little trickle, but I do take the point. You are right in principle. But he had to turn more of the village off than he should have had to do because he couldn't actually turn off the bit he wanted to.
So are they coming to actually mend that thing at the top of the
They're supposed to. Well, he's marked it up to do it.
It's marked up, yeah.
That's the principle, but they'll do it in their own time. Yes, it's not great. I spoke to him when he was on the phone to his boss for 20 minutes trying to work out what to do because he'd been around all the taps and he couldn't get what he wanted. And one possibility was that there's a bit of pipe that's not on the map. Because you'd think that there's just a pipe here and a pipe there, but in fact there's one, until you get to the Swan, coming through the middle of the village, there's one on both sides of the road, and they join at times. So if you turn one bit off, it goes the other way round. And he couldn't get some of the taps to turn off. I don't know, he's probably not supposed to have told me that, but that's what it was. Okay, so that's all of that. Payments for authorisation, then the clerk's expenses.
Got that. Not much on it, it's the stamps. This is when I'm sending the planning applications out that I can't post letters. You know, I normally, if they're within the village, I hand post them, but when they're down the outskirts, under hill and such, I don't.
So change your spreadsheet to UK dates.
That's a benefit to the villages, isn't it? That we shouldn't forget about. Because you leave a stamp up, they just have to pay for them.
Isn't that funny?
That's what your machine does.
Okay, fair enough. It's the formatting problem then. Okay. Right, so we agree clerk's expenses?
Yes, we are so
Can I say something?
Thank you.
About clerk's expenses, please. May I say something about
Oh, please do. Yeah.
I know I said it jokingly in an email, but I actually think we should give everyone at least some overtime, at least, for going beyond the call of duty.
When was that?
Well, I know she does it all the time, but this particular instance of actually going to see one of our residents to try and explain the council's functions. And
Oh, yeah.
I think a medal as well.
Oh, indeed.
That'll be a weekly allowance then.
Certainly danger.
Or bonus or something. I
Well,
don't know. I just think it should be
I
recognised.
don't think that what I'm thinking of is that dangerous. I think
Well, I do like a medal.
I think medal.
We have a special medal struck.
Well, what I would
What
suggest is that if you'd like to do that, then Yvonne, it'll be September now, but puts a closed session on the agenda and we'll have a talk about it.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, that's a good idea.
About
Well
that
said.
generally,
Well
yes.
said.
It's like they always say on the investment adverts, they can go down as well as up.
I don't think they quite mean it in the same way.
Right. Working party reports, caretaker, Yvonne.
We had a meeting yesterday. Updated us on everything that he's doing. We took each, grass cutting, hedge cutting, trees, all those sort of things. And he told us exactly what he was doing in all the areas. And he's happy with the equipment that he's got. We asked whether there was anything else he felt he needed. No, he's quite happy with that. Whenever he's got a problem with any of it, he's able to sort it out himself. We then we went through all the areas, Memorial Garden, Coronation Field, Churchyard, all those sorts of things, so that we covered any concerns we had, talked to him about it. The brambles that are encroaching around the perimeter of the Coronation Field, for instance, he will get hire a flayer, which will cut it all back, but this will be sort of autumn time now, and he's got time to do that. And once again down in the cemetery, when the grave diggers dig their holes and they've got all this excess clay, they then dump it down the bottom and it's coming out into the area, into that grassed area at the bottom. So he's suggesting hiring a mini digger that will push it all back so that we can clear that and make that better as well. Biffa are no longer emptying the community bin because it is one of ours. It's not on their actual list because they empty the others. Albert empties all the bins once a week anyway, always has done. Before, it was actually Biffa's job to do it as well. So some of the bins, Biffa were empty, so Wittersham actually will often get 2 empties a week, whereas other places don't. But they won't empty the community bin, and that's one that gets really full. So,
which one is that?
so we thought
At the shop.
Oh.
red one, bigger,
Right,
so it's
outside
bigger than.
houses.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So we will get another bin, and I'll put that there so that he can then empty the 2 bags.
I have told the shop that that's what we'll be doing.
Good idea.
So that will cover that. So otherwise, I think it was quite a successful
Yes,
meeting.
yeah.
Yes,
He was very open and
That's
you know,
fine.
situation in general.
It's good. Okay, the monthly transaction statement and the caretaker statement.
We've got
We've
those.
got 2 spreadsheets. See, these come out correct, so that's why I think it's rather strange.
When I download them, there are 4 of them I think, they all come out with the same file title on my system.
Oh, possibly because within mine, I got the big one, monthly one,
Yeah.
out, the main one, comes under my finance, and the other one comes under my caretaker, but I still call it a monthly transaction statement under my caretaker file.
Right.
So when I pull them out, they end up
Okay.
with the same
Okay.
total.
Yeah.
Just tell me which one.
So you've got,
Well, there's a little one.
yes, you see the caretaker one is just pulled out of the main one. So the main one's the one that you really need.
Can I ask a question that I sort of half thought of before, but I've probably never asked you, and it's exactly what our VAT position is, because on the caretaker you always identify the VAT, and on the main one you don't.
No, I don't.
But we actually get all the VAT back anyway.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was a bit curious. I think it's probably because of the VAT. That's actually a penny out
What am
there.
I looking at?
Now, I
That's the
presume that
monthly
it's doing
transaction.
VAT calculations.
I've got
You
on
know,
May.
It must drive you mad.
Well, actually, the thing that it does drive me mad now is
Yesterday,
UK
finance
fuels.
agenda.
Because what they do, they obviously,
I'm on the wrong month, that's why.
I have all the different receipts, and I have
Oh,
value
there we go.
mowers, so I can pick out which one, so I can separate it out, so I know what the costs are for all those. But they then go and put individual bits, but they don't do it as a VAT thing. They have a total, all the diesel, and all the petrol, and just give me the VAT for that. And this is where your pennies are.
Yeah, that's
I
what
don't
I've
know if you may have noticed on that last one that I sent you,
Very confusing.
I'd had to put plus a penny,
Yes.
because when I
Yes.
took it from the
Here's
receipts,
the penny out.
it was,
That's why.
It is very confusing, that fuel one. Yeah.
and the way they produce it, you know, landscape rather than get,
Is that UK Fuels?
yes.
So they should be giving you a VAT receipt which gives you net.
Oh,
Right,
that
right.
does,
Oh,
but
okay.
it doesn't tie up with the
Actual
summary,
bills.
which, yeah.
Very odd.
Okay, is everyone happy with what's on there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good, okay.
Yeah,
so
I don't
can
think there was
sign that.
anything.
Is the Kubota rear deflector? Is like they have on the Formula 1 cars? They can take it back. Is that just so he can whiz along? Sounds fantastic.
It does, doesn't it? Yes, that's the one I have to pay for in advance when we actually got it.
Do I do them both or just the
Yes,
one?
please. And then you've got the quarterly budget,
Yeah, no,
which you've got there as
indeed I
well.
have, yeah. So,
Yeah, this one here.
there we are for now. So the quarterly budget, you've all got that in front of you, that comes straight off the computerised accounting system. The £8,000 receipt actual, that's the previous year come in later.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. 2021. And the 350 for the grants given, which one was that? Or 2 or 3? We've given the grants already, actual.
350.
Yeah,
No,
donations and
grants.
grants given. Just wondered what it was.
Was it just yesterday?
Only just a matter of interest, really.
Donations.
Not one that sticks in your mind.
No, it's not one that sticks in my mind. Yes, it is. It was the sports
Oh,
club
gosh,
for
yeah,
their
absolutely, understand, yeah.
tea party.
Yvonne, can I just ask, did all the spreadsheets come out in the same email from you?
Yes.
Okay.
Would you
Is
like
this-
them? I did all the finance ones together because I had so many.
Well, the one, I can't seem to find the first quarter's budget statement.
It came out on the same as the.
Is it the summary of receipts and payments?
Yes.
What's that? Okay, it's
That's
the
what they
last
call it.
It came on the one telling us all the extra information, didn't it? Or wasn't it?
I did a finance one and yes, I did because there were so many bits. But yes, they call it receipts. Summary of cost centre.
Yeah.
Really. But the budget figure, if you look at the total budget figure, it's ties up without what we budgeted, and the receipts are the same, and the payments are the same as you find on your
And
sheets.
next year, Yvonne is contemplating trying to calendarise the budget a bit. Because at the minute,
Well,
the
it is.
variance is...
It's all is already done.
It is done. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Didn't look like it.
No, I'm not sure how it works, but it's all. I don't think it does what we thought it might do.
Okay. Well, else it's a different one that does.
Yes,
I
possibly.
mean, what we thought would happen is quite commonplace, so it's probably in there somewhere. So Yvonne's put it in, but it hasn't worked that way. Okay. Time for another one of your famous phone calls. Okay. Planning, the decision on Underhill Orchard, granted.
Yes, that was granted, and since then the ewe and lamb has come in today and has been refused, with the same reason as before, which is that the proposed scheme, by virtue of its design and layout, would result in a substandard level of residential amenity for the future occupiers, failing to provide any private or semi-private indoor and outdoor space due to extensive overlooking from number 5 ewe and lamb ewes to the detriment of the amenity of future occupiers.
And they can't get
That's
rid of
really
it.
what we felt, wasn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that was the reason why it was refused before.
Yeah.
So
Well, they can't.
they turned it round and they've still been refused.
Yeah,
can't
they put
over-
the same
can't
thing in
overcome
again.
it.
Yeah. I mean, they presumably will now stop hitting their head against a brick wall.
Well, one would hope so.
Right. Did Leslie know that today?
Yes, she had a letter yesterday.
Right, good. I didn't notice any extra delight.
Oh, she was.
Right.
Yes, because it came in yesterday, so it was.
Open spaces?
Does that include any proposals that we've got possibly in hand for play areas?
You mean on the agenda? If
Well, we've got open spaces, but I'm thinking naturally about the adventure playground or whatever that has been talked about, and I just don't see it on our agenda today.
Well, it's because that's nothing
It
that
doesn't
we
come
can
in
do
there.
until Jeremy's sorted out
We haven't got
with
anywhere with
ABC.
it.
Yes, I've forgotten if I've missed the last meeting, so I don't know.
No, Jeremy was
What I
speaking about it
mentioned
earlier.
Okay,
What I said earlier about trying to persuade Ashford to grant us the land.
yeah, okay, yeah.
So there's nothing
Well,
we can do. In
No,
the meantime.
just by the way, I'm a bit of an expert in looking at children's playgrounds because I quite often go off here, there, and everywhere. And just for information, there is a particularly small but fine one at Whitstable. I went to
Whitstable?
last week,
Not far
and
away.
at Whitstable Castle they've got
Wait for the
a
seafood.
most acceptable adventure playground that children clearly like a lot. Anyway, there's just a bit of information for you.
Okay.
Well, next time I go to my favourite frock shop in Whitstable,
Go up to Wittersham Castle and you
I
can
think
have
that's
a bit of
what
a you can have a bit of a whiz around and a slide down and all sorts of
Well,
things.
Alan enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did.
Right, okay.
Yes, I can just add that when a couple of months ago, probably now, when Alf was over by the play area, a spy were over there and they were cutting down the hedge and they are going to do the safety area.
Yes.
So they had said they will do some work. on the area as it is.
Yes, that's not really what we want in the long
No,
term.
but it's improving.
Well, any improvement is better than nothing.
It is, Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Just would like to say on open spaces, thought particularly actually coming up from through the village tonight, how lovely that triangle looks.
Yes, it does.
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
Very good.
And that whole area with the war memorial, it really is.
It is good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's come a long way.
Yeah.
Can we is it a good idea just to sort of pass that
Well, I think
comment on to Lexi and the team?
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep them motivated.
Yeah, because I think
Yeah.
it's a credit to the
Yeah.
village.
Yeah.
I think she may still be right back. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I would like just to add that two little trees have appeared on the memorial garden.
What have appeared?
2 little trees have been planted on the memorial garden.
When you say appeared, were they beamed in from above or something?
Well, I didn't see them appear, but they
They did
are
appear.
there.
If you plant an acorn, eventually.
I just-
spade or
They've been, well, one is where the apple tree was that was blown down in the wind, and there's another one not far away from it.
So they've been presumably donated by somebody?
Yes, it's just that we're not on. It's parish council land. We need to be
Informed.
informed that these things are happening, not just
put there.
planted.
Well, the thing
No,
is,
so what
that
you're saying, well, we've been informed, but
No.
we should...
No.
there was a request. There
Well,
was a request for the first one, which I said had to go to Yvonne, and before it had got to Yvonne, the tree was planted, followed shortly afterwards by a second one.
Well, if everyone starts doing that, we're going to have reforestation
Yes.
again.
Yes.
So we just
Well,
need to be a
isn't
bit
that what we're
careful.
working
We
to?
know that. That's why Yvonne's raising it.
On the Richter scale of naughty things that have happened in the village, I put it down at the bottom of the list.
Thank you, Anna.
No, not really. No.
But it is a problem. It is a
We're
problem.
having got
Yeah,
peanuts
little
everywhere.
acorns, oak trees,
Okay,
I doubt it.
Let's
Oh,
just have one
one.
meeting.
I doubt it. But whatever, yeah, I don't mind.
All right. Move on to highways.
The Cooper's Corner to Wittersham Road, they seem to have run out of filler. They've done sort of up past Allen up until probably the illegal camping site, and the rest of it past Cuckoo riding stables and everything that seems to be pretty ropey. I think they've run out of whatever. They've marked it up.
Yeah.
But
They came for a couple of days, but then
Yes.
they seemed to have thrown in the towel. It's just too big a task.
They ran out of stuff.
And of course the other thing is that, it won't be long, and I know it's not really our business, but the Small Hythe Hill, and indeed, coming down the Small Hythe Hill, it won't be long before we're cut off from Tenchton completely.
Yes, right. Yes.
Yeah, you see what I mean? And there is a terrible, the worst pothole of all.
Yes.
For
Yes.
everybody's
Yeah.
warning, if you're coming from Tenchton, just through the bottom end of Small Hythe on the left, there's a pothole that's about that deep. And if you hit that in my car, which is a Beamer, and it's designed for potholes, it's the end, it cracks the wheel. It's the end,
Plus the fact that the instant going from sunlight to shade
Yes, that's right.
makes it really difficult. If you've got pedestrians on that road, that's terribly dangerous.
Have you reported it?
Well, I didn't. It only happened to me yesterday, and I haven't had time today. But
It's only got
it won't be
3
long
weeks.
before we're cut off from Tenchton.
That's
Maybe
right.
that's not a bad thing. I don't know, but we will be cut off soon.
Well, if you remember after our last, well, you weren't there,
No.
our last meeting, but after our last meeting, this is when I said I would contact our highway steward to find out what highways were intending to do
That's
with that
right.
road.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when I get the answer, then I put it on next door, and then we get flooded with lots of stuff afterwards. But the problem is this leak from wherever it's coming from. It's the same sort of thing that we got on Pear Tree Corner.
That's right.
Yes.
It's water that's coming, and I don't seem to be able to.
I don't think it's
Sort
something
it.
adding it's a spring or something.
Well, exactly, it's water that's coming from
Yeah.
who knows where. That's the problem.
Yeah.
And until they can sort that out,
Build a bridge.
my
Seriously,
Build a bridge.
just take it above the spring.
like we do with public rights of way. When you get the ditches and the streams, you put a bridge over the top.
I mean, they need to come along with a water divider, because these people who know how to use a water divider, I mean, they find water almost anywhere.
It is going to be dangerous.
It's been passed in
It is dangerous.
There isn't going to be an accident.
Yeah, a very serious one.
I think you're probably right, Colin. And we
There was a bad accident there 3 months ago.
Yes, there was.
Was there?
We
Yeah,
have got the water divider in the
down
village.
into the right-hand bend.
We
On the right-hand bend, but it's,
in the
yeah.
village.
We've got one, have we?
Yeah,
What's
Jane.
it?
She lives down Kingsgate on the right-hand side.
Oh.
Jane Waters.
I didn't know that. Well, she's not. I mean, that's her territory. Send her up there, for goodness sake.
Oh.
What about you contacting the chief clerk in Tenterden? Because it is, of course, theirs. Saying, have you been kicking KCC highways to do something about it?
Yes.
Because we try, but of course it's not our area.
Oh.
You know, I know if I'm going to Tenterden, go the Rolvenden way from where I live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's just a little bit safer.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, obviously, it is a problem because for us, we need to get to Tenterden.
Yeah, precisely.
But so do Small High people,
Yeah.
and that's Tenterden's
It's
responsibility.
not so much the
And they've got
petrol,
more
it's the
oomph than we
wheels,
have.
and I know that
Yes,
with
I know.
Brian's car.
Rolvend's quite dodgy.
The whole place is, the whole area is dodgy.
Is that highways?
That's highways done. PROW.
Okay.
Well,
The second cut, vegetation cut, is due. They're doing 3 in Ashford this year. I'm not really aware that they did a first one. I'm not out every week, so I can't prove it. But they was going to start on the second ones this week. Trevor and I have been out carrying out a sort of spot vegetation clearance around the stars and stuff, and the brambles where we can, but it's a bit ongoing. Yes, we know when we're walking, some of them
Okay.
are good.
Can I just mention that with the change of ownership at Rugden Barn, is it possible to reopen the public right-of-way between Rugden Barn and Cuckoo Cottage Riding Stables? Because the lady that she changed all the signs around and built this and that rest of it, and she what's her name? Marie? No.
What, the riding stable lady?
No. From Jane's end, her neighbour has sold up and gone, so the new people are about to arrive, and the right of way at that end, the signing of it and everything. I can't remember the name of the woman. Anyhow,
They were putting in a diversion.
Oh, were they?
Yes, an official diversion they were
Right.
putting in, but I don't know how far it got.
I don't know. Yeah.
I'll find out.
But also the complaint was from the other end.
Oh, it's
that you can't get that. All the gates are closed.
Yeah.
The Alsatians are released, and I mean it completely goes. I've got no axe to grind with the establishment at all. They do a great job, but it's not right that someone can just.
But isn't the footpaths organisation dealing with that?
It's KCC.
When
It's with
when you're out on a
KCC.
Wednesday afternoon, don't you plough through with your machete?
Well,
We do that on the yes, if you've seen us. But that one,
Isn't that what you do?
yes, that
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
She's more of a secretary's lady.
Oh, I assumed you had a machete.
She's slightly concerned after the incident of burning.
it's still going to the wider world at the moment.
Right.
I'm doing my best.
yes, you are, and thank you so much for that.
It is,
It's,
indeed.
Okay.
Excellent.
So what Yvonne has said is that is KCC are aware of that problem,
Yeah.
and it's up to them.
But I will find out what's happening about
It's a good,
diversion.
it's a good idea with new people moving because they don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll be shouted at
And the
again.
lady that we had the altercations with is Paul saying
She's
she's
good, yes.
Yes. What's that?
I don't
Did-
know.
did
we
this-
just shouted at.
Yeah, I don't know. But she's gone.
She wasn't there very long, was she?
No.
No, but for some reason Cheshire was calling.
Cheshire, right. Cemetery and churchyard.
The fencing, the gap. Paul was down there today and he's put in some posts and sort of put in where he thinks it should all go, and I've got to meet him down there tomorrow morning just to confirm.
Was that just going to happen anyway, or was it because I got worked up last week?
That's been ongoing for a long time.
No, so, right, I guess it was happening. Yes.
Yeah,
It wasn't anything to do with me getting
I'm
worked
afraid
up.
not.
No,
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 you can't take credit for that.
I wasn't looking for credit, honestly, I wasn't. I I was just going.
Yeah. Oh, yes, he was.
All right.
Don't disappoint.
Okay. Next council meeting, unless we have to have one in the middle, is September. We don't meet in August. Items for information from anybody?
No.
Only that, and I don't really want to make us too much later, so I don't think it's something for another time. I did attend, and Mick was there, a workshop with Southern Water on Zoom, because I'm still slowly trying to progress any action that can be taken about the parlour sewage system in the village, and also, our water supply. So I thought, well, we'll go and see what they're on about. And it was actually, it's an information gathering session, because they've got their next budget to do for the next 5 years, from 24 to 29. And I did push in the Q&A sessions. I just kept pushing about our local situation. What they were talking about was much bigger and very interesting about there is, a huge impending water shortage. I mean, what did they say? There'll be a water scarcity by 2040 of 1 billion litres a day shortfall in Kent. We are already in the southeast. The southeast is one of the driest areas in Europe.
You said 2014 or 2040?
40, which isn't, that far away.
We're all quite old by then.
We're supposed to be talking about legacy, Alan. And we have a deployable water similar to Morocco or Israel in the southeast. So, we are very dry.
Yeah.
So there were big issues being talked about, and polluting the sea and all of that. It was very interesting. But I just kept pushing on about, we have problems in this little village, and there's a development being put forward, which frankly we need for affordable housing, but we don't have the infrastructure. Would they come? Is there anybody there who will come and see us, who will talk to us? And I also mentioned Jeremy's initiative of trying to get Southern Water to help us do some sort of promotional thing around the village about how we can stop the wrong things being put down the loo. They took it all on board, and interestingly, I did get 2 or 3 names to contact. They are now saying they want to work with communities and all of that rubbish. But there were names to get hold of. There were people who might listen, so that will be pursued.
That'll be helpful. That's good. It'll be helpful. Thank you.
Yes, it would.
Okay, we need to try and pull those two together. My main concern at the minute is tomorrow. And we'll see what happens after that.
Yeah.
You're on the move, are you?
But it's something we should be doing, regardless of
Okay. Anything else for information?
No.
Otherwise, I'll close the meeting and Yvonne can pull the plug out.